Next Sunday, it'll be all right on the night.
You're very lucky there wasn't another one up the spout.
He gets first-class hotel, he gets his readies, and he gets out-of-pocket X's. Hold on.
More snippets from the cutting room floor. It'll be all right on the night 3 next Sunday on LWT. Blue money.
Style, Larry. Smart thinking.
The best things in life are free.
Billy Connolly's eye is on Debbie Bishop and the blue money.
That's what I want. I need more.
Tim Curry stars in a new film comedy thriller from LWT next Sunday, Blue Money.
Over dinner the other evening, some friends asked me where I got the meat for the meal. When I told them it came from Tesco, they were a little surprised. But they shouldn't have been. Just listen to that crackling. You always get good crackling with a leg of pork from Tesco because the rind's never removed like it is at some butchers. I doubt their butcher has better pork than this. And as for these pork chops, they're so good. Well, anyone can grill them with orange, pan-fry them with sage, or whatever. See what you're missing if you don't get your meat at Tesco?
The Car, a magnificent new publication that week by week carefully gathers the world's great cars under one cover. Get The Car with Part 2 free.
Cocktails with the captain's compliments.
Okay.
We also have a selection of Phileas Fogg, tortilla chips, Californian corn chips, and mignon morceau.
Captain Buchanan, at your service. And you are?
The Forsyth Jones.
With 2 Fs.
I'm afraid you don't appear to be on the first-class passenger list.
There must be some mistake.
Have a pork scratching. Yeah.
Phileas Fogg, first-class snacks from around the world.
Lyons apple and blackcurrant sundaes, baked with pride.
Son, happy birthday? It's my birthday.
The phone. It's for you to cheer someone up.
Track.
In the future, when the television has adapted to the age of the computer.
Enlarge. Stop.
By becoming one itself, will they remember the first of the computerized televisions? Developed by ITT, programmed to monitor itself over 50 times a second, ensuring a picture as clear and sharp in later years as in its first days.
Hard copy.
The ITT Digivision.
Have a break. Have a KitKat.
Just about to start on Channel 4 is a new series called Poets and People. Tonight, Tony Harrison, one of England's best poets, returns to his native Leeds. That's on 4.
This Monday on ITV, a hit squad fights its way across Europe.
A car was stopped this morning in northern France. 2 Arab terrorists were killed. 1 we lost.
They were going to London. The code word for their operation was Kima.
You mean I'm the target?
That's why we're going with
Rod Steiger is nuclear scientist David Sokolev, who finds himself caught up in a world of secret agents and desperate assassins. Anthony Perkins is Secret Service loner Jimmy, whose job is to keep him alive at any cost.
It's amazing. You form a wall around me. And when I think that any one of you would lay down his life, for me, it's sobering thought.
I suppose he'll try to kill them.
He'll try.
What's the matter with that bastard? Why doesn't he kill the lights?
The Glory Boys, tomorrow at 9 on ITV.
In Quarter of an Hour, Anthony Hopkins stars in A Married Man. 2 people have been brutally murdered in a country retreat. For John Strickland, plans for a change in his life have turned into disaster. A Married Man at 10:15. And at 11:30, we'll return to Eldon Square in Newcastle for more international snooker. Dickie Davis introduces further coverage of the quarter-finals. This is London Weekend Television. Now we join ITN for the latest world news read by John Suchet.
Disarmed, the Irish haul from the IRA. Mr. Kinnock, the conference fight is on. The Beagles saved from research. Conducting for the Queen in Canada. And to miners' children from Russia with love.
Brilliant, fantastic.
Good evening. 5 men from the IRA trawler the Marita Anne, seized by the Irish Navy, have appeared at the Special Criminal Court in Dublin within the last hour. They were charged with having guns and explosives. Arms found on the Marita Anne in Cork today included rifles, submachine guns, rockets and hand grenades. But the Irish Justice Minister, Mr. Michael Noonan, has warned that the IRA are still alive and killing, despite the arms seizure.
The operation to unload the massive arsenal from the Marita Anne started around dawn. Late this afternoon, the weapons in packing cases were loaded onto army lorries. Even some security chiefs were surprised by what they found in the ship's hold. Alongside over 100 of the IRA's favourite Armalite rifles, the only weapon actually put on show to newsmen, were dozens of sophisticated German-made Heckler and Koch submachine guns, which are also used by the SAS. But it was the discovery of Korean hand grenades which particularly worried the Irish Justice Minister Michael Noonan, who said he feared it could add a new dimension to the savagery of the IRA, who haven't often used grenades in the past. Also on board, medical supplies, combat uniforms and a fiberglass boat to ferry the arms haul from the trawler to shore. There were scuffles this afternoon as the 5 men arrested on the trawler were brought from a Cork police station where they'd been held overnight. Some of the men gave clenched fist salutes to a small crowd of IRA supporters who jeered as they were driven away on the 160-mile journey to Dublin and an appearance at the city's Special Criminal Court. Outside the court, Joe Cahill, a former IRA leader and now a top official in their political wing Sinn Féin, and himself convicted of gun running in 1973, waited for the prisoners to arrive. There was more abuse from IRA supporters as the convoy drove down the street leading to the courthouse. The 5 men were jointly charged with having guns, ammunition and explosives. One of the accused is Martin Ferris, a member of the National Executive of Sinn Féin. Another is Michael Brown, the owner of the Marita Ann. All 5 were remanded in custody. Ivan Little, ITN, Dublin.
On the eve of the Labour Party conference in Blackpool, the party's national executive has voted to support a resolution attacking what it calls police violence against miners' pickets. It's seen as another setback for Mr Kinnock, who wanted to exclude it from tomorrow's pit strike debate. Earlier, the executive backed him over giving all members a vote to reselect MPs, but 2 big unions then said they'd tried to delay that proposal.
The miners' motion was approved quickly at today's executive, although it undoes all their previous efforts to keep the debate strictly to pit closures. This motion talks of unlawful action and organised violence by the police. Mr Kinnock knew he couldn't get a majority against it, so he stayed silent with the others, though some colleagues regretted that afterwards. A rally tonight gave a foretaste of tomorrow's debate. This won't be the last call for Neil Kinnock to come out more strongly for the miners.
And if Kinnock, no matter about what Willie Whitelaw says or Margaret Thatcher, he's the leader of this party, and the rank and file members put him there as leader of this party, and he should support them that put him there, and he should get out there and have a look what's happening.
Today's decision on reselection by the transport workers means Mr Kinnock's chances of getting his way on that tomorrow are in the balance. So were they undermining him?
I don't see why one person is different than another. Merely because we disagree, and disagree in a democratic way, that doesn't undermine our positions. It makes us even more positive in our approaches the next time.
Neil Kinnock may have found it a relief to take a break from the executive to meet some long-distance campaigning cyclists. Against advice, he decided to go for a ride on a tandem. If the political week ahead is no more wobbly than this, he'll have survived well. David Walter, ITN, Blackpool.
A senior White House official in the United States says he expects last Friday's meeting between President Reagan and the Soviet Foreign Minister Mr Gromyko to lead to new arms talks within a few months. The Russians walked out of arms talks last year in protest at the deployment of new American missiles in Western Europe. An Egyptian court has sentenced more than 100 Muslim extremists to hard labour for plotting against the government after the assassination of President Sadat 3 years ago. But there were jubilant scenes in the Cairo courtroom when the sentences were announced, as the prosecution had wanted 300 death penalties, and more than half the defendants were acquitted. The trial highlighted the activities of the outlawed jihad group, thought to be responsible for a series of terrorist attacks in the Middle East.
In history, 300 Islamic fundamentalists were accused of a holy war that started with the assassination of President Sadat in 1981. The prosecution said their aim was to overthrow Egypt's pro-Western government and to replace the West's most important ally in the Arab world with a fundamentalist regime along the lines of Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini. Even as these soldiers, civil servants, students and religious leaders were being sentenced, though, they shouted that they had not acted alone and that they had the support of others, both at home and abroad, who would continue to fight the jihad, the holy war, they had started. It's in the name of that holy war that the American embassy in Beirut was bombed 2 weeks ago, that nearly 250 American Marines were killed in Lebanon last year, and that this summer mines were laid in the Gulf of Suez and the Red Sea, prompting the Western powers, including Britain, to send a task force of mine hunters to Egypt. The terrorist group claiming responsibility for all those attacks, Islamic Jihad, said specifically it had laid those mines in Egyptian waters in support of those on trial in Cairo.
Until now, no Western government has been able to do anything more than point an accusing finger at Iran. But in the past few weeks, the Egyptians have gone a good deal further and openly accused both Ayatollah Khomeini and Libya's Colonel Gaddafi of being the masterminds of Islamic terrorism. Egypt's defense minister, Mohammed Abu Ghazala, says that in mid-July, when mines in the Red Sea first went off, the Egyptians intercepted and decoded a message from Colonel Gaddafi to Ayatollah Khomeini. According to the defense minister, Gaddafi was telling the Ayatollah, "Our mission in the Red Sea has been completed. The Red Sea will be red blood." Western diplomats here do view the minister's barefaced accusation with some skepticism. What they don't doubt, though, is Egypt's claim that the Islamic holy war is not just the terrorism of individual fanatics, but a war that has the support of radical Muslim states like Libya and Iran.
David Smith, ITN, Cairo.
And the Ministry of Defence has confirmed that a mine discovered by a British mine hunter in the Red Sea 2 weeks ago was made in the Soviet Union. They say it's a new type of mine, but stress there is no reason to believe that the Russians were responsible for laying it. The 6 South African dissidents sheltering in the British consulate in Durban have appealed to other embassies for sanctuary. They say they fear the British authorities are about to make them leave, but the Foreign Office tonight said there'd be no change in the situation and the dissidents were not about to be evicted. 12 Western European nations, including Britain, have agreed to increase aid to Central America by 50% to £35 million a year. But the countries have ignored advice from President Reagan to exclude left-wing Nicaragua from the aid package. Members of an animal liberation group have broken into research laboratories at Bagshot in Surrey and taken away 14 dogs, which they claim were in a very poor condition. While they were inside, the group took video pictures, which they've passed on to ITN.
25 members of the South East Animal Liberation League broke into the laboratory. They found the 14 beagles, each worth £400, cowering in specially converted dog kennels. Music was blaring in the background as a form of alarm to prevent break-ins. The League say the dogs, which are used for testing the toxicity of products, had skin, eye and mouth infections and were in very poor condition. Today there was no one to answer calls at the laboratory headquarters in Surrey, but the company did say the beagles were used together with rats and mice for testing products for the pharmaceutical industry. They insisted, though, the methods used were humane and involved taking only blood and urine samples. They're now worried about the health of the stolen beagles, who've been bred to live in laboratory conditions and aren't used to being pets. Chris Rubczynski, ITN, Bagshot in Surrey.
30 people have been slightly hurt in a train derailment at Dorridge near Solihull. All 9 carriages of the Manchester to Gatwick train came off the track, but none overturned. The Queen and Prince Philip, on their royal tour of Canada, have been treated to the biggest military tattoo ever held there. And later, in a more relaxed atmosphere, they visited Toronto's Little Italy.
Deafeningly realistic opening to Toronto's pageant of Canadian military history. The city's biggest football stadium had been decorated with an old Loyalist fort. There was to have been a 21-gun salute, but after only 6 had been fired, the horses of the Queen's landau took fright. The grooms saved a potentially dangerous situation. So the Queen, this very cold night, entered with a sniff. There was a splendid march past of militiamen in the costumes of Canada's first 200 years. As it went on, the Queen proved she knew the chorus of Something About a Soldier. And that is fine, fine, fine. At the end, the massed bands of 20 regiments played. Indeed, so massed were they that the conductor needed a forklift truck. This morning, Toronto's Little Italy turned out, musically and with much emotion, to greet the Queen. Fathers brought their children to seek a handshake. It's the touching that counts. Outside the church, there was a vast crowd and a small boy who wanted a hug and a kiss but couldn't quite get the message over. Shame, really. Anthony Carthew, ITN, in Toronto.
Golf now, and Spain's Sevi Ballesteros has won the £45,000 Suntory World Match Play Championship at Wentworth. He beat Germany's Bernhard Langer 2-1 in the final. The Daily Mirror has announced that a mother of 5 has become its first bingo millionaire. Tomorrow's paper